Hi, I'm actor Ian Champion, and welcome to The History of Horror Cinema, a personal podcast journey through the good, bad, and ugly of the history of horror movies, based on my blog, The History of Horror Cinema. Oh, and please don't forget to hit subscribe. Lon Chaney was voted the top male box office star by theatre exhibitors for the 2 consecutive years of 1928 to 1929. An even more impressive achievement when you consider that by that time, talking pictures had begun to render silent films virtually obsolete. The same accolade was given to silent screen female star Clara Bow. Chaney was very resistant to move over into talkies. Many silent-era actors feared that sound would expose their vocal shortcomings. In his case, it seemed to be as much about giving up some of his mystery, and let's not forget his unique label of the Man of 1,000 Faces, a badge of pride that owes itself to expressing characters solely through his physical talents. He needn't have worried, though. His voice test passed with flying colours. Lon's background in theatre may have helped with diction and developing a rich voice that would have been missing in those whose pre-screen experience hadn't given their natural voices the benefit of training. Vocally, he has the deep, rough-hewn, authoritative sound reminiscent of his contemporary Walter Long, as well as looking not unlike him. This match between his voice and the brooding masculinity of his screen personas was a blessing. There are those who couldn't make the transition. The Unholy Three, 1930. Lon's fears were overcome by Universal deciding to make his first talking role a remake of 1927's The Unholy Three. The familiarity of the material helped, as well as the shortened development time by using much of the original silent version script. There was also the encouragement offered to him of a $50,000 bonus promised by MGM on completion. As it turned out, Chaney needed every enticement available to get through the shooting day. By now he was suffering in secret from the early stages of lung cancer that would shortly take his life after the filming was completed. The Unholy Three is a mixture of improvements and failings on the original film. The only returning members of the team were Chaney and Harry Earls as the diminutive Tweedledee. Todd Browning was replaced as director by Jack Conway, owing to the former's recent flop The 13th Chair in 1929, causing him to leave MGM and go over to Universal. Ironically, part of the problem with the remake is in the reliance on sound. The audio track is muddy, which makes Earls and especially Ivan Linov's dialogue as Hercules hard to make out. In Linov's case, this is exacerbated by his awkward delivery and Latvian accent, giving unintentional amusement when he menaces Chaney with the memorable threat, "How would you like to have me suck you one? Just for luck." There's also the remake version of The Huge Ape, which, unlike the original one, a trick-photographed real normal-sized ape, was now a blatantly obvious man in a monkey suit, which harks back to the Laurel and Hardy comedies like The Chimp, thus adding even more unintentional amusement. Lila Lee's Rosie has some of the ballsy quality of Mae Bush, but sorely lacks her vulnerability, coming across as phony by comparison, when she breaks down in melodramatically demonstrated tears at possibly losing Herman, a too unbelievably sappy Elliot Nugent for her. Where the sound aspect benefits is in allowing Chaney to show his vocal versatility to match his physical range. In this remake, audiences can now hear him impersonate the genteel old Mrs. O'Grady's falsetto, as well as parrots and other voices. Such was his skill at this that he had to sign a legal document as part of publicity to attest that all voices attributed to his character were actually performed by him. The court climax and denouement are also more credible, not only because Chaney takes the witness stand as Mrs. O'Grady, and is revealed to be really Echo by the prosecution, but also in the aftermath he is on his way to jail when he says goodbye tenderly to Rosie. In the silent version, he escapes any consequences by being unconvincingly acquitted. Chaney's first talking picture was a success, and as a studio who at first knew nothing about his tragically advancing cancer, MGM planned a number of follow-on projects. The most intriguing of all was the negotiation between them and Universal to allow him to be loaned out to the latter for what would have been Dracula in 1931. This sadly never came to fruition, and may not have been granted anyway due to MGM's understandable investment in Chaney's stardom themselves while under contract. If it had, Bela Lugosi's Broadway success in the role might have been his sole opportunity for fame. And of course there will always be the alluring speculation as to how Chaney would have played the role. After a short family stay at his beloved log cabin in the Sierra Nevadas, Lon Chaney died in hospital on August 26, 1930. His fame was great enough that all studios observed a moment of silence in his honor. His fans were shocked, as most people had not even known of the great actor's illness. Over successive decades, Lon Chaney faded somewhat from public memory, apart from compilations which narrowed his reputation somewhat by focusing on his horror performances in The Hunchback of Notre Dame and The Phantom of the Opera. I'd like to close my series on Lon Chaney by paying tribute to 3 elements that have aided in restoring him to prominence, and a more truthful view of the range and influence of this supremely talented actor. Man of a Thousand Faces, 1957. By no means an unflawed film, this is nevertheless a valuable movie biopic that paints a sympathetic and respectful portrait of Chaney as an artist. James Cagney is superb in the role, albeit noticeably somewhat too old, and yet deftly replicates Chaney's younger days in variety clowning scenes, using his own background as a stage performer. One noteworthy issue with the film is the contrived ending on Lon's deathbed, where for movie audience sympathy, Lon adds Junior to the name on his makeup case before passing it on to his son Creighton. We can speculate that neither father nor son might have welcomed this in real life, as Creighton very unwillingly and much later succumbed to taking Chaney's professional name out of career desperation. The standout scenes for me in Man of a Thousand Faces are his miraculously healed con artist from The Miracle Man, unlocking his crippled body in a careful and committed tribute to the spirit of Chaney's work, rather than attempting a slavish copy, and the enjoyable sequence where he sits down and sets to work making himself up to fit the day's studio call sheet announcement for a scarred Lascar pirate. I'm sure Chaney would have relished this no-nonsense honoring of his famous work ethic and huge talent. Secondly, there is Michael F. Blake's colossal lifelong research into Lon Chaney's legacy, the second of whose marvelous books, A Thousand Faces, helped me immensely in background research on Chaney's life. Finally, Mr. Blake is a welcome contributor to the terrific documentary Lon Chaney, A Thousand Faces, released in 2000 by TCM Movies, and narrated by Sir Kenneth Branagh. This is available on social media and also the lovely Masters of Cinema Blu-ray DVD release, and contains a wealth of knowledge and great use of Chaney's film clips.